Alright folks, it's Sunday morning again, so let's go through my diary. So how have we done this week? I have underperformed again, down 0.45% compared to I've learnt a new thing in my spreadsheets. If I press control and then scroll up and down, it does that. So I can show you the numbers quickly instead of faffing around with menus. Yeah, so that's me, 0.45%. And the Life Strategy 118.60 have all beaten me. As usual, year to date, that's a bit big, isn't it? Year to date, I'm losing heavily as well. You can see I'm only 2% up for the year. And then from 2017, I'm absolutely appalling, as usual. So let's have a look where that performance for the week came from. Next Energy Solar didn't do well. That's 5% down. Same with Gore Street Energy. Harmony Energy's carried on though. Still another 2% up this week. I mean, we can't be that far off hearing some news on some actual, proper news that means something. Yeah, the healthcare stocks, the healthcare ones are doing really badly. Not good there. I'll just hold on forever. What's the worst that JFK Jr. is? What's his first name? Is he a J? Probably not. And the small caps as well, they're having a bit of a comeback from their high. Yeah, not much else to report there. How's Fundsmith done? It seems that Fundsmith now fits on one page since we got rid of Apple. Actually, it was fitting on one page anyway. I don't know why I used to go to 90%. 24. There we go. Coloplast, they're not doing too well. Yeah, Alphabet. Oh yeah, they invented. Well, they didn't invent it, but they've created a quantum computer, haven't they? So that's just hype. So I won't get too excited about it. But it's news. But I'd rather just see the results come in, to be honest. Anyway, so there we go. There's the Fundsmith portfolio. You can pause it there if you want to have a proper look. And another bumper week for dividends. Just the usual mix of SCHD and Fundsmith approximation ones, and what were the big ones? Scottish American. Yep, so that's one of the big income trusts. Relatively low yield though. And Brunner and Scottish Mortgage, they were the big ones. Everything else was just bits and pieces really. 414 quid. I think next week is a pretty barren one, if I remember correctly. Yeah, the next big one I've got is the 20th of December. Oh no, so that is next week. Okay. Yeah, so there is a half decent big one there, but that's the only one for next week. I think it's the week after. What's the week after? 23rd to the 27th. Yeah, it's the week after where there's absolutely nothing. So that'll probably just be a couple of tiny ones from SCHD and Fundsmith. So at the beginning of each month, Fundsmith gives a little summary of what they've done over the month. And one thing that happened in Fundsmith Sustainable, which is not the one that I'm replicating really, they sold out of McDonalds in that. So now, if we look at my holding of McDonalds in the Fundsmith-ish portfolio, we can see that I have it ear tagged there as I eat there a lot. So before last week, it used to say I eat there a lot / Fundsmith Sustainable holds it as well. So now, my only reason for holding McDonalds is because I eat there a lot. So that's the kind of deep insight on investing you're going to get from this channel. So I hope you appreciate it. Oh geez, I'm only 7 minutes in. And what else happened? Oh yeah, Merchants had they've refinanced 15 years at it's a bond they've issued, I think. I think that's a bond at 5.91%. Okay, in the editing I realised they've borrowed 50 million and paid off 42. So that's about 8 million extra they've borrowed, and that's about 1% of the market cap. So yeah, increase the gearing a little bit. So I went into the last annual report when I first saw this news, and it's actually the revolving credit facility that they're replacing. So this is actually going from a variable rate loan to a fixed loan. So, I mean, who knows whether that's going to end up being a good decision or not. It depends on how interest rates go. Yes, but considering the trust yields 5.17%, I don't think 5.91 is such a big hurdle to beat to make having the loan worthwhile. Yes, I saw today that this was going to be a short week for the video because not much happened. So luckily there was a couple of comments on last week's video. 2 people mentioned JGGI, which is JPMorgan Global Growth Income, which is a very popular investment trust. Now these 30th of the 9th, say 31st of the 10th. This is why it's always good to go to the source. Don't just trust other websites, because as we can see, we've got a more up-to-date top 10 here than the AIC has. That theirs is still in September. Yeah, so basically the 2 comments were generally just like, oh, why don't you... One of them was, why don't you sneak it into the income section of your portfolio, because they kind of knew that it's not really an income trust. It's really a growth trust that has a dividend policy of paying out, I think it's 4% at the beginning of the NAV. Where is it? Does it mention the dividend policy in the AIC's website? Yeah, here we go. The company will set a target dividend each financial year equal to at least 4% of NAV. Okay, so there is some kind of like hedging there. Will target and at least, so they could go more or less, really. But generally, I don't think they've veered off this. I feel like I would have heard about it if they had veered off that and used either of these, that term or target. If they utilised those 2 phrases, I would have heard about it probably. But yeah, so the dividend. So this is why the first commenter was like, sneak it into the income section of your portfolio, because they knew that it's not really an income or value or dividend focused trust at all. It's just a total return or absolute return. What's the right phrase? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, they're a total return portfolio that just happens to have a dividend policy of paying out 4%. So that's why it wouldn't go into the core of my portfolio, because I have my portfolio into 2 sections really. There's this section here that's highlighted, pure growth, which is about, at the moment, is just over 25% of the portfolio. That's Fundsmith, Scottish Mortgage, the smaller companies that are growth focused, healthcare and impact. In fact, let me highlight which ones. It's a simple rule basically. If the yield is low, it'll be in the growth portfolio. See, the thing is though, Brunner is getting closer and closer to the growth portfolio just because it's done well. Yeah, so those cells there, or those lines there, they're the ones that are in the pure growth section of the portfolio. The reason I don't hold JGGI in either section is, well, I don't know. Yeah, well, there's no particular reason. It's just kind of the way things happened. What would put me off buying it now, if I was to sell something, is that it doesn't really fit into either section of my portfolio. The highlighted blue ones, I don't want dividend income from them. I want them to be the growth driver of the portfolio. So I don't want the dividend. So, I mean, I suppose the only way I could own it is if I made it into a zero yielder, because I could probably do that. I could buy it in Trading 212. I think you need to put it in a pie of just itself to do this. I'm not actually sure. I'm not sure if you can put I think it's called DRIP, isn't it? DRIP in capitals. I don't know what it stands for. So I suppose I could have it in the pure growth section of the portfolio. I'd just have to set it up as a pie. I think I have to set it up as a pie with the automatic dividend reinvestment turned on. And then I suppose, theoretically, I could put it in that section of the portfolio and just call it a zero yielder. But yeah, for the other parts of the portfolio, though, what I want ideally for that to be steadily growing income, not income that could fluctuate up or down. I don't want any of the down in that section of the portfolio. So if I highlight my play portfolio, so everything that isn't highlighted there, I want all of that to be steadily growing dividends. I don't want any of it to be fluctuating. The rest, I mean, I'd like these ones to steadily grow from their low base, of like 1% or not far off 1%. But they can do what they want. For instance, biotech growth is a zero yielder. Worldwide healthcare, I know, has a history of just not caring what it does with the dividend. It went up recently, but that was just purely a side effect of the dividends they got paid. It was nothing to do with them deciding they wanted to increase the dividend. So, and in previous years, I think they've reduced it. So So, I mean, I'm fine with that happening for the growth portfolio because that's such a low yield in the first place. Whatever percentage change they make to 52 quid isn't a big deal to me. But if something yields 4% or like 4.5% there, if that dividend went down by 20%, I'd be pretty annoyed because I want that, because that's a larger number you're making a 20% reduction in your income from. And that's what could happen, when eventually there's a sustained bear market, 4% of the NAV of this fund becomes a lower pound amount. So it could never be in the income part of my portfolio. But yeah, like I say, there isn't really anything stopping me putting it in the growth section, because I think if we found out the I'll do that. I'll go and have a look and see if I can find out what the underlying. Actually, no, there's a simple way of finding it. Actually, isn't there? I think we can just look at dividend cover. So if we look at no, it doesn't show it. It doesn't show it. That's annoying. I wonder if the AIC show dividend cover. Dividend cover, revenue reserve. No, that's not. You see, this is an indicator of its dividend policy. You see, the revenue reserves are 0, and that's because it never pays. It always pays more than it's received in dividends from the underlying portfolio. That's why the revenue reserves are 0. I mean, the portfolio top 10 tells you a lot anyway, because that Nvidia has a microscopic yield, Microsoft is less than 1%, Amazon's 0%. That's a pretty decent dividend actually from memory. Meta's less than 1%, United Health is a couple of percent, I think. MasterCard less than 1%. LVMH, can't remember, I've got it in my Fundsmith there, that's less than 1%. Yeah, so that one might be higher, but generally you can tell by the top 10 that it's nowhere near a 4% yield. On the plus side, in good times we get this fund gets amazing dividend increases, 23% recently. In the good times it gets massive increases, it's just volatile, it's a volatile dividend. But at the moment it's in areas of the market that have been doing well for the past 10 years, so all is hunky-dory at the moment. But if or when things turn around, it's going to affect the income that I live off. Not a big deal if you're not retired yet, not such a big deal, but for me, I'm living off this money. Here we go. Revenue return per share, 8.35. Now, do we get a share price at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year? Benchmark return. Here we go, 579. Now, is that the beginning of the year? Not sure. I mean, this will give us a ballpark figure. I don't know if that figure's from the beginning of the year or the end of the year. But if we do 8.35 divided by 579, whoops. So actually, yeah, that's roughly 1.4%. So yeah, nowhere near the 4% that it pays out. So, but it's as it says on the tin. They're not pretending that they're doing anything different, so it's fine. But it's just not suitable for me. Now, as I said a minute ago, I could put it in the growth section of the portfolio. But you're right. You might remember a few weeks ago, I was talking about my lack of US exposure in general, and in that video, I mentioned that at some point I'm considering selling. Or if there was like a bit of a good run for these three, they made a bit of a comeback, maybe for a year or two, I mentioned that I might possibly swap them for JAM. And you'll notice the J is the same as the J at the beginning of JPMorgan Global Income. And that's because I think, for me, considering I'm underweight US and I could really do with bumping it up a bit, I think the better choice for me personally, given the rest of my portfolio, would be, instead of buying something like this, which I'd have to faff around with, I'd have to put it in a pie, turn the drip on so it reinvests it, and I'd end up with a zero yielder. So that replacement, I'd be replacing roughly, I don't know what those three average out to be. I don't know what the weighted average of those three is, but yeah, there is a yield there. So there's a bit of income, 160 odd quid. So it would end up reducing my income, and it would be a little bit messy. And also, it wouldn't be increasing my US exposure. So what I'm thinking is, I'd probably go for JPMorgan American. And we can see here, let's just make the chart simpler. We'll take out the NAVs, just look at the share prices. We can see here over 5 years, JPMorgan American has beaten JGGI, and over 10 years as well. If I remember, yeah, over 10 years as well. But I mean, it was close. All the way it was close. But that's to be expected. America's done the best over these years, hasn't it? So it's to be expected that it's won out, only by a little bit though, as we can see, and it's only in very recent times that difference has kind of expanded to 60% over 10 years. So I think that would be better for me. And given that it's run by the same company, it focuses on the area of the market that I'm underweight heavily. I think this would be a better choice. Even when I was to go into something like this, it's pure growth, its dividend policy is aligned with its investment policy. Yeah, so as we can see, the dividend yield is 0.67, which at the moment would be a 23% reduction in my dividends if I was to swap out those three. But it's in the ballpark. It's a similar kind of yield to the three it would be replacing, and it's just progresses gradually, which is what I want. I don't want it to fly higher and then in a bad market, in bad times, go lower. This one just has a consistent dividend history. I think from memory, I think there's some flat years, but oh yeah, so back in the day, there was some reductions. I don't know what was happening back then, but I've got a feeling recently, they'll either go flat or they'll go up a little bit, So there's a bit more consistency there. I should check actually, what is the actual policy? Right, so there's no commitment there, but it aims to continue its progressive dividend policy. So it's not like it's going to for sure go down. If the NAV goes down 20%, it's probably not going to reduce its dividend by 20%. And as we can see there, it generally has dividend cover. Obviously there's the COVID times where it didn't have cover, but before it was at 16%, and now we're about even with the cover at 100%. Let's just compare September's portfolio, shall we? It's easier than going to the actual website. Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Meta, Apple. Oh, there's a difference. JGGI doesn't have Apple in its top 10, so there's a first difference. Berkshire, no Berkshire. Okay, so it is reasonably different. I wasn't quite sure how similar they were, to be honest. LVMH, yeah, you see his, obviously that's not going to be in JPMorgan American. I don't know what country that's from. Lowe's, Capital One. Anyway, I don't know exactly how similar they are. If like for instance, if we were to just remove all of the non-US stuff from JGGI, I don't think it would be an exact replica of JPMorgan American, but I don't think it would be massively far off, given that it's the same company. They use all the same research. They've got a pretty similar history as well. I showed you that chart before, didn't I? So I think, two things are stopping me. One, I'm loath to sell these until I've had a good run. That's the issue with those. I want them to have a good run before I sell them. So that's probably a mistake. They say you shouldn't do that, don't they? They say that if you're thinking about selling something, you shouldn't be waiting for a recovery in it before you sell it. You should just do it now. But I'm too stubborn. I want these to turn out to be a half decent investment before I swap them for something that might do better. Which is illogical, really, but what can I say? It's another thing I do wrong. Something else I can tell you about, since the video is going to be short. I've totted up my first month of this accounting year. I've totted up my spending, and as you can see, my plan to try and spend more money this year is failing miserably, because I spent 687 quid from November 4th to December 3rd. That's how much I spent. So yeah, I'm not doing well on that front. But while we're at it, I've been thinking about this actually, and I think I've decided actually my plan to spend more. I mean, this is a good budget. I'll probably try and stick to that. But in general, I think my plan is, rather than trying to gradually spend more, I think I'm just gonna, because I'm 2 years into travelling the world in these cheaper countries, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't tend to like doing anything for more than like 5 years. I stayed in my caravan for 5 years, and I'll probably end up, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm quite liking what I'm doing at the moment, but in 3 years' time, I'm probably going to be ready for a change. I always am. So what I'm thinking is, instead of like trying to spend more properly now, I think I'll just spend a little bit more each year for the next 3 years. So that'll be 5 years in total of travelling around the cheaper countries. And then what I might do is just have a big step up in my lifestyle. So what I might do is just buy a car and run that. And that gives me more, because by then I'll probably want to spend more time in England rather than going around the world. And it's kind of nice to see new places and stuff, but it's also nice to get home and have familiarity and food that I like and stuff. So I might get myself a car and I might drive that into the Balkans, which I've really liked. And that would be like a major step up in my spending. That's going to add at least a couple of grand a year in petrol and depreciation of the car, stuff like that. So yeah, I think that might be the way I can force myself to spend more money. Because day to day, like going to the shop and buying toothpaste, I'm never going to buy the expensive toothpaste. I think that's the way I'll force myself to spend money. Do it in like step changes every so often. I did do a little bit of Nasdaq rundown. It's kind of for those that haven't seen this spreadsheet before, it's kind of like a doomsday scenario that I have modelled in here. It's some figures from the Nasdaq. Basically, it's just a terrible performance in the growth section of the portfolio, because my plan is just to spend the dividends, spend the interest that I get paid on my cash, and then any excess that I need to spend in a year, I sell from the growth section of the portfolio, which is what I highlighted earlier. This section here, I sell from the growth section. So in this doomsday scenario, I've already deflated the growth section from 98 grand to 80 grand. So that's part of the doomsday. I've then got it falling by massive amounts for the next 2 years. And then somewhat of a recovery, bit of a bad time, massive fall again, massive rise. Now I am cheating here because my spending I've got rising at 2%, which is a bit low to be honest in the current times. Maybe it was realistic when I first created this spreadsheet, but we're in different times now. Although it's a long-term projection, so at some point we might get back down to that sort of level of inflation. You never know. But anyway, this is how I've got it modelled. But obviously I've got it modelled for a much higher spend. I spent 11,800 last year, and this spreadsheet has me spending this amount. It's the amount I might be able to get by on in England, rather than choosing a cheap lifestyle like I do at the moment. I've got 3 years. I'm almost exactly on my anniversary of travelling. A couple of months' time, that'll be my anniversary of travelling, I think. So I'm thinking. So we've got my spending getting modelled, going up a couple of percent a year. We've got the SIP bonus for however long I've got it, and then the LISA bonus is added to it there for the first 6 years. And it adjusts the cash levels. If I spend more than I gain in my total income, which is the cash interest, plus the bonuses, plus the dividend income, if I spend more, then it'll sell off here from the growth portfolio. But if I spend less, it'll add to my cash. That's why the cash has gone up to 35 grand there. So if we model it this way, I've got planned 12,500 roughly to be spent this year. As you can see, it increases the cash level by a few grand because there's an excess there of 2,550. So then what I'm thinking is I can do equals minus 20,403 plus open brackets 1.06%. So a nice little boost to my lifestyle there, 6% higher than the year before. Yeah, so now I've got 3 years of just doing what I'm doing now, but 6% higher each year. And then what I can do is at the end of the 3rd year, buy myself a car, maybe 12 grand. Small car, but reasonably new one that's good, efficient, reasonably new, but small, because the efficiency feeds into it being small. And then I can do what I'm doing now, but spend more time in England. I can go to more of the haven, because I like going to these haven static caravan parks. But but when I'm on foot without a car, I'm very limited. I could only find 2 where I could just have a nice walk to get to the amenities, like to a shop and the beach and stuff. But now, if I had a car, I could do more of that in England, and I could go to more of those places at a reasonably good cost. At the beginning and at the end of the season, they're reasonably priced, so that's when I'd go to those things. And then I can drive into Europe, and then for some months of the year, I could leave my car at my sister's and go off to Asia, or who knows, one day I might even venture into South America, who knows. So that's that. So that's going to add at least £2,000 to my spending. So what was that? It was about 14, 50. Let's get down to like 17 grand a year on that lifestyle with a little car. Yeah, so there's another 5 years of faffing around with a car, and then I've got absolutely no idea what I might do after 5 years. I mean, this doesn't have to last 5 years. At any moment, I can just decide I want to just live a conventional life in a small flat in England. But this is just idea I have in my mind, and this is my doomsday spreadsheet, which kind of shows that it is possible. Let's see how much selling there is. What have we got here? Oh, we obviously the day. Oh no, it's not. Yeah, see, we're not even selling because these first few years are saving a few grand each year. So actually, even buying a 12 grand car doesn't get me down to 5 grand, because what this spreadsheet does is, once my cash levels here go down to 5 grand, they stay at 5 grand, because that's the buffer I want in the bank to do something at a moment's notice, And so once that gets down to 5 grand by spending more than I earn in total income here, it will then sell the growth portfolio. But as you can see, with that little plan that I've got here penciled in here, I don't even have to sell any of the growth portfolio to buy the car at the end of year 3. Oh, editor here. Just a point of clarification. That amount of cash I have is partially based on the fact that if I were to suddenly need to buy a car, that's why I've got 20 grand, so that a big bulk of it is earmarked for a car if I suddenly decide I want to move back to England, buy a car. So once I've bought a car, it's okay for my cash levels to go down. But if I were to spend more than I earned in cash, in interest and dividends, etc., in an ordinary year, and the performance of the pure growth portfolio was pretty good, I would just replenish the cash. But in this scenario, I'm buying a car, so I don't need the cash to buy a car because I've already got one. So there we go. So that's pretty good there. And in fact, there's never any selling of the pure growth portfolio. In this doomsday scenario, it just allows it to recover, which is good. Anyway, that's the pondering I was doing on my spending for the next 10 years or so. But these are just thoughts. Anything can happen. I could decide tomorrow just to move back to England and live in a flat. Who knows? Alright, that short video that I was struggling for content on has ended up being pretty long, hasn't it? So I'll see you next time. Have fun, guys. Bye.